Greetings and salutations, Dota fans. It is I, Badger, here for an exclusive one-on-one interview with rising star NA middle laner, Rohofireflu. How are you on this fine evening?
I'm doing wonderful, Badger. How are you?
Doing fantastic. But it's one of those things where I felt this was a duty I had to fulfill, Dota 2 community after recent events. For those who don't know, we're going to elaborate on this one later, I assure you, but there's a slight bit of drama with the North American close qualifiers. And the people who are unaware of who you are said, well, this Rojo guy, who is this guy? He must be bad at Dota. It must be match fixing. There is no way this guy could genuinely beat these players. But I'm here to help enlighten you on who the man, the myth, the legend, NA close qualifier first place winner Rohofireflu is. I'm going to start
Mhm.
with just asking, who are you? Who is Rojo? Where are you from? How old are you? What are your interests outside of Dota?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I am Roho, aka Rohofireflu, aka Shane. I live in a decent sized town in Washington, and I am 19 years old. A little bit of background, um, which is relatively young, but 3 years ago I was in a similar place, except I wasn't competing. So I guess that it would have been cool to have an interview back then. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I love playing Dota. I've been playing it since I was 8 years old, um, which is which is pretty young for a lot of people. But a lot of that time was spent playing like unranked games and with my brother or with my friends. So I didn't take ranked too seriously. I think in general it was like it's like a stressful environment, and a lot of people flame you. There's a lot of rough situations in those games, and so things can go pretty wrong quickly. But outside of that, just playing Dota, I like playing music. I play the guitar mainly, um, which still I'm not an amazing guitarist, but I do like to play it. And I suppose there's probably not a whole lot other than that, other than yeah, I'm not sure. I think that covers a lot of it.
You an acoustic guy or an electric guy, anyways?
I like playing acoustic more because the whole setup of electric takes too much time, and it kills my motivation. But I also do love the electric guitar, but I'm not so great at that one.
Just hook up the wires, put it into the amp, adjust the sound levels.
Hmm
30 minutes later, now you can enjoy playing versus, oh, let's pick up the guitar, pick up a pick, maybe strap yourself in, you're good to go.
hmm Yeah, yeah. I have an electric guitar that I paid a good amount of money for from when I was working, but uh, yeah, it mostly sits most days because then I don't want to tune it, and my acoustic is just right there, and yeah, it's a whole process. But hopefully one day.
But outside of the non Dota stuff, going to get into the stuff that everybody loves, of course, everyone's favorite activity, Dota 2.
Mhm.
So you mentioned you started when you were 8 years old. At what point did you begin to want to chase the competitive Dota, grind out pub, and get on these semi-pro sort of teams?
I was not on to any professional team, even really amateur, until I had played with Grin actually. So the people that I'm currently with. Um, I hadn't really received offers, and I didn't really go looking, just because it's competitive Dota in North America. It's not the most lucrative for a lot of people. I would say also you kind of doubt whether you're good enough. I thought that I really was good enough probably about the time that I was 15 or so. Um, I think around then would probably be when I hit Immortal, and I was pretty young, but as you get a little bit older, I felt that I was gaining a lot of knowledge outside of Dota that was helping me improve, just like the way that I could play in game. Um, but yeah, I think I played on some like small like Reddit leagues. I remember back in 24 or like 2014 or so, maybe like 2015, with some random friends who I'd met in pubs. I would they wanted me to play on like a Reddit league with them, and at that point I had played carry, And I remember my favorite thing was that I would go Battle Fury, Midas, Juggernaut, and I would do it almost every game. Um,
Oh no.
I think we placed second or decently in one of those like Reddit tournaments, but it didn't really mean much to me. Obviously, it didn't mean much in the grand scheme. So that was maybe my competitive origin, but all in all, I think it mostly goes back to probably the 7 months ago or so that Bry Guy and Grin reached out to me.
A very convenient sort of segue then. This is where I was going to go anyways. I was going to
Mhm.
ask, how did this whole Grin team begin as a concept? Is one of those things where I guess this is Brian approaching you as like, all right, I'd like you as a player. I want to build around you. How did that begin?
So to my knowledge, Grin is like they have quite a few like small amateur teams. I think they've attempted to branch out to other games. I think just in general, they're kind of just this small org, and a lot of their focus is kind of on amateur play. And I think Bry Guy had me on his friends list for quite some time. I imagine because of probably one of those Reddit leagues or something that I played in, where we probably played one of his teams. So I've had a lot of random people on my friends list because I used to just add people, just for no reason. I would see them in a pub, I'd play them in some game, and I had Bry Guy on my friends list for quite a while, and he one day kind of reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, we have this this league that we want to join, and we're looking for a mid laner. Like, do you want to play for us?" And then I think this wasn't even the first time that he had done this, but essentially every time that he had, my answer was, "I would love to, but I think that that league is probably MMR capped too low." Essentially, like he forgot how high my rank was, either because I had like lost my immortal number from not playing ranked, or maybe he just didn't have the perspective of like what number was what. Um, and so it was always funny. I always thought it was funny the reaching out to me, and then it turns out that I'm too high MR. And I think after that, I think it was maybe at the same time, some point later, he um, basically said, "Oh well, we're trying to start like a professional team. Like, do you want to join that? That we'll be trying for DPC." And yeah, from there, I didn't really have many offers, and it sounded fun, and it sounded like something I could get my name out with, and so I said, "Yeah."
The funny part there is like, all right, you're not good enough to go pro, but you're too good to play in the amateur leagues as well. So you're in that uncanny valley of, all right, I'm not getting paid to be pro,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm literally too good to play in the amateur league. Well, it's like, all right, I'll go pro at this point. Get this Brian guy to manage me, get some players around me, see where we'll go from there. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, at that point, you were probably like a top 100 leaderboard player, immortal, whenever you had a badge.
Yeah, I hit. It was like 3 years ago or so that I hit top 100 for the first time, and then I kind of just sat on it. Um, I sat on it for quite a while because I kind of reached my goal, and then I was like, "Well, now I don't want to play ranked." Um, so yeah, at that point, I was the top 100, I suppose, mostly unranked player at that time.
One of the legendary NA unranked rank sitters, the absolute menace to pubs. I'm sure anybody who plays NA unranked knows, but you've
Mhm.
now evolved to the now you're beating actual professional players instead of just beating pub players.
Mhm.
But so Brian comes to you, it's like, all right, you're too good to play amateur leagues. I'm gonna make a pro team around you. Was it one of those things where like, he was bouncing players off you, or you had players in mind that you would try out with you, or
Um,
how did you form this current Grin roster? Really, any Grin roster.
I'm I'm not sure. I assume that it wasn't formed around me. I assume that there was some other people in contention, but um I probably was the highest MMR mid laner that Brian could have reached out to. I was a little bit surprised um that nobody else had reached out to me, as humble as that sounds. But yeah, sometimes mid laners are hard to come by, at least from what I've noticed. It's sometimes I think they're in huge abundance, and sometimes they're really hard to find. Like in China right now, they have Sumaila, and Aster, which is obviously I think most teams would accept Sumaila onto any team, but it is a strange situation. And so I think they have a shortage of mids over there. That's kind of, I suppose, how the role goes.
It's one of those things where there's plenty of mid laners, but you find a mid laner who doesn't have like a mental illness and can speak English and isn't going to run down pubs, well, suddenly you're limiting your hero pool very significantly to the additional, players who could actually play mid at their best skillfully.
Yeah, that's one way to put it for sure. I think yeah, you're right. I pride myself on usually being pretty well behaved in my pubs. I'm sure sometimes there's some people who would disagree, but usually I try to do my best. I try to be pretty kind in team environments and stuff. So I think that's a big plus to having me on the team in the first place. So yeah, but other than that, I know our original Grin roster was mm, completely different people except for me and Muzi and I have been the two that kind of stayed, and that if at first the roster wasn't being built around us, then by the time that the second or third iteration of Grin came around, then it kind of was.
All right, we're basically building a team brick by brick into
Hmm.
current form. You've got yourself, of course, Mister. You have the so-called Ecuadorian hammer, Muzi, and you need to suddenly find support players and a carry player. How did you come across Back and Soul? How did you come across Gucci and Jim? And for those who are
Um,
wondering, we'll be calling LGTK Gucci and the artist known as Strawberry Shark, aka Salacious Sea Lion 60, aka Salivating Salmon 37 as Jim because their names are long and a mouthful.
yeah, our position 5 is um, you know him, you love him. Anyway, LGDK I think is the other. He was the other kind of third core member of the roster. It came from originally we played with a position 5 player, and we just called him Paul. I think he has a Chinese name that I'm sure other people might recognize him by, but I don't know it. We called him Paul. I love Paul. We still talk sometimes. He's great. But we just um, I think he was part of the original Grin roster, and so it's a little fuzzy. So I'm trying to get it all. He's part of the original Grin roster. No, wait. Okay, I'm losing it. I'm getting ahead of myself. The original Grin roster had Bulljax, which I'm sure a fair number of people can recognize.
Bulljax, you say?
Um, Bulljax and Colonel Squid, which I also have nothing bad to say about any of those people. They were wonderful to play with, but we unfortunately didn't quite get the results that we wanted, which is natural. Colonel Squid is normally a middle player. He wanted to try carry for our team when he had been reached out by like Bry. Um, just because I was filling the mid lane role, of course. And so we didn't quite get the results we wanted. A little bit unlucky. A little bit. What can you do? Um, and so it's kind of back to the drawing board. And one of the teams that we had faced and that we had not beaten was a another like kind of small team in the scene. I can't remember what their name was, but they had Paul, who was the position 5 who'd come on with us, and then I think LGDK and Wuji as well. All semi recognizable names. Again, nothing poor that I can say about any of those people. Um, but they came on, I think, essentially just because we realized that the roster hadn't really worked. We didn't really want to run it back, and so we were, I think Bry Guy was looking for people, and a lot of it was. I think what it was is that team was looking for two players to fit into their roster, because two of their players had left, and there was two players that they kind of that just wasn't working out for them as well. So Bry Guy, I think, had been in touch with them, and it was kind of like this obvious thing, like, oh, we have three players here, and then we have two players here. Their roles fit well together. We can probably try to make this work. And
You tried, but
yeah, we did try.
but
I don't think. I think that might have been. I'm not sure what team we. I know we went through open qualifiers with the Colonel Squid iteration. I think. It's crazy to me that we did three qualifiers. Now that I'm thinking about it. The Colonel Squid iteration was the first one we did, and then the the in between phase of the next qualifiers, we were kind of trying to see if everything would fit. So we were doing scrims and we were doing other things, and essentially we we just felt like what we were getting in like these small tournaments that we would join, such as TDL and stuff that we pretty regularly do. We weren't getting very far with it, and we were kind of frustrated with it. We felt whatever we were doing wasn't working out perfectly, so we decided that we would kind of look for a new iteration of the team, and there's no hard feelings with that. But LGTK was one of the people who kind of stepped onto the team, and we wanted. I think it was very mutual that LGTK wanted to stay with us, and that the other two I think kind of wanted to stray away from competitive Dota as a whole. So very mutual feelings. I think it was like I said, no harsh feelings. And from there, we needed to get a carry and a 5-player, which we ran through a few people. I can't. I'm not
You
sure
can't
that I
link all the
remember.
players you tried out, probably.
Yeah, it wasn't not that it was some crazy amount.
You
It's just
know, and
it.
I know, but you can't say it publicly, so.
Yeah. But it wasn't very. None of the players were there for essentially very long. We tried some things and we weren't really landing on anything yet. Eventually, we came across Jim, wonderful salivating salamander. We knew that he had been in DPC before on Happy Seals.
As well as
He seemed
KBU.
like as well as KBU, yeah. So we were definitely happy to give it a go, and from there, then we kind of had the core 4 players, and we were from there trying out 1 players. And Jim just said, "I know this guy. I think he's pretty good. I've been on teams with him. I think we lane really well together. I think we play really well together, and he's a nice guy. We can give him a shot." So we did, and then yeah, everyone liked it. We thought the team clicked well. It was it had some rough moments, and then we were like, okay, we'll take this team to qualifiers, and the rest is essentially history. There's more to it, obviously, but
And we will get to that
um,
history, of course. We're going to get to
mhm.
that history. It's funny, though,
Yeah, I don't
that
want to get ahead
your
of
origin story begins on. I actually know the other end of your origin story. I'm actually good friends with Bull Jackson Squid, which is convenient, you see, because
it.
I remember they were talking about, oh, we're going to abandon our friends and our like Fume and Acid Rain. We're going to play with these high MR players for this league. We're going to see how this goes. And of course, that didn't work out, unfortunately. We end up on the other end from one Badger teammate, Colonel Squid, to another Badger teammate, Jim, of course, which is a little bit
Yeah.
self-relating for me there. But you end up forming this roster: Dragon Soul, yourself, Gucci, Jim, Farm Prio in
Hmm.
that order. And you go into the second open qualifiers, the last tour, the one before the current one that was played, or so. And I
Hmm.
remember casting every single one of the games in those first 3 qualifier runs. And I was surprised, like, wait, these guys have some pretty good players. Why are they not winning the games? What went wrong in
Hmm.
that open qualifier too?
Um, honestly, I think it was kind of just a string of bad days that kind of led to some um I think we had some rough performances. Maybe just like individually, one player on this game had a rough game, and then the next game I had a rough game, and it kind of spiraled into not I wouldn't say a bad team environment. I don't think it was very like abhorrently toxic. I just think that it became a little harder to play just because now we're like we're kind of getting through these and we're not making it into the closed, and that's kind of a stressful situation to be in. And we were facing some pretty good teams. I think from like just from the players and the names alone, we didn't have as good of seeding as we did this time, which I still think that this time we would have done really well regardless of our seeding. I do believe that, but we we did get some pretty good seeding, I think. But Dragon Soul was on a lower level Faceit account, so we kind of got into like these harder games, and we just weren't at that point as a team. We weren't ready to play those, and so I think we needed a little more time to practice. We essentially put that team together maybe 2 weeks before maybe a week or two,
And not
not
even
very
two
long.
weeks. I remember Jim was saying like last minute. You guys are trying around
Mm-hmm.
players and bringing him in. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try playing at this team. Might just leave him after the qualifiers because this is gonna do it for fun. He told me, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
with 3-4 months hindsight, it's funny to see how it turned out. But this is really an ad hoc team for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a strange experience, I think, for all of us. It was definitely a disappointment for us because I think that we knew we had the potential to, but we just weren't at that consistency yet. Um, and so yeah, we just had some rough games, and then of course we famously played San King Gomez in the OQ number 3 for our last match to get to closed. And as everyone knows, San King Gomez, very good players. They're Division 1 now. Um, so kind of an unfortunate last team to run into, like because the DPC was essentially our practice at this point since we had been so last minute.
And that was an incredibly
Um,
close series as well against San King Gomez. I remember that
mhm.
series. If memory serves, you guys went up a game. No,
Yeah, I think so. I think we either won the first game or the second game, but we had one game, and the third game was pretty close. All of them were pretty close. Um, so yeah, it was very unfortunate. Like a team that was going to make it to Division 1, we were very competitive with. So clearly by the third OQ, we had kind of gave it our all. It was just barely enough to not hedge out against San King Gomez, which obviously things would be fairly different, but you know.
nail biter against San King Gomez, no name rank 500. I'm seeing a bit of a discrepancy here between the reputation, but
Hmm.
obviously you guys end up sticking together, which is relatively rare especially in the North American Open qualifier sort of scene, where usually if you lose, you change team members. Hell, sometimes you win and you change team members and you get disqualified from DPC. But I mean, roster instability is definitely not unheard of for teams that end up losing. Well, I mean, obviously, you guys had some promising stuff against San King Gomez. Is that what made you guys say, all right, we enjoy playing together. We played closely against SKG. Let's run it back, keep it going?
Yeah, I think as a team, I would say we're very good at kind of looking at each other in a very honest sense. I think um, we essentially had a day or two break, and we were like, "Hey, this was clearly a very tough situation." Um, some of us were pretty stressed. Um, not that anything like really bad happened, but it was a stressful kind of event. We were disappointed mostly in ourselves, and when we just said, "Okay, we're gonna have a team chat," and I think a big part of the reasoning was like, well, when you look at the NA scene in general, like these teams are almost never staying together. People are moving rosters very fluidly, um, and a lot of these teams don't really make it anywhere. Not to call anything out, but that's kind of the way that it has been in NA for a long time. I mean, so we just thought like, we do like playing with each other. We kind of established some things that we thought, we hope we don't continue doing as we go on, and some things that we hope that we do that we did very well in those games. And from there, we were like, well, if these teams don't stay together, like, why don't we just try? Why don't we try staying together? It'll be a little bit different than what other people are doing, and there's a lot of teams in these really competitive regions, like especially in EU, where some of these rosters have been together for a very long time, and those are some of the most successful rosters. Obviously, there is very fair reasons to split up from teams, and we've had our fair share of roster shuffling, but we thought, if this is working and it's very close to working, why would we kind of just give up? It would seem um, almost offensive, I suppose, if that's the right word.
We'll go with it. It works well enough. And I remember it's like, all right, this team stayed together. You guys played some, smaller tournaments in between
Mhm.
OQ2 and OQ3. But of course, those tournaments, I mean, Dota's a very hierarchical game in that it's TI, majors, DPC Div 1, DPC Div 2, everything else. There's, again, for vast majority of teams, you're not good enough to say get invited to Dream League or whatever, one of the big Saudi lands. Nothing else matters other than that exact hierarchy. So you guys, I was like, all right, we know it's coming. Next tour DPC, run it back, win open qualifiers, win close qualifiers. Hopefully, that was your idea. Of course, going to OQ3. I remember again, I casted every single one of the games in OQ2. I run it back, cast every single one of your games in OQ3, and you guys look like a much more inspired team in OQ. Seems like you guys are playing the new map very well farm wise. Again, Muzi was playing better. I thought Jim was playing better. I thought everyone was playing better, really. and you guys were taking teams to Pound Town in OQ3. I mean, up until that American Goons best of one gentleman series in open qualifier number
Mhm.
one, it was beat down, beat down, beat down. I remember talking to Jim before OQ2, and it was like, yeah, we're gonna see what we could do. We'll do our best. Talking to him before OQ3, he was like, yeah, we're gonna win this. He literally was like, yeah, we're gonna win this. These teams don't stand a chance. And it turns out it was not arrogance. It was confidence. He was completely correct. It was beat down, beat down, beat down, slap down, slap down. Rojo demolishing people mid. Both safe lanes being won. Both off lanes being won. It was beautiful OQ3. Is that how it felt internally as well? You guys feeling like,
Um,
yeah, this is our open qualifiers? What was going on before the Goon series?
yeah, I'm very flattered. Yeah, I think we did very well. We had very high expectations this time. We had worked pretty hard. I think everyone is being pretty serious. We had been we'd done a lot of scrims. We had been kind of in the drawing, like back to the drawing board, changing a lot of things about our play style, seeing what works best, and I think we kind of cracked, especially on this new patch. We felt this new patch was really good for us. It kind of anything that happened in OQ2 is going to be very different, and I think we're all pretty creative, smart players. Even like I think that's one of our big strong suits is we are definitely very intelligent players about the way that we kind of approach Dota, but this new patch was a great way to show that off. And so that worked really well for us. I think there's also a big obviously like we were trying to have a good mentality about losing scrims and losing series and smaller tournaments and stuff, just trying to improve generally, very trying pretty hard to improve. And um we knew that it would pay off. We had been we had played some scrims and stuff where we felt pretty confident in those games that we played, and we had even scrimmed some pretty high level teams. And one of the teams, admittedly, we got given the business for sure. But we look at those scrims, and the losses are just an opportunity to learn. And
It's a learning experience.
um,
You get beaten by, say, like Shopify or EG. It's not a beatdown. It's an improvement session.
yeah, and that's how we tried to view it, which I think was very healthy for the growth as a team. And just doing I know especially the side laners were very adamant about doing their 2v2s and um, really just working hard to become really good at matchups. We did a lot of draft preps going into our series, so we took it very seriously, which I think everyone appreciated. Sometimes it's hard, I think, to get all 5 players on board with we're going to show up like on time. We're going to do these things that we really need to do. Some players are going to make some sacrifices to be here. Um, and yeah, like obviously a huge shout out I think to Dragon because he lives in Turkey and has a job that he has to work at, and he's playing a lot of these matches on 140 ping at 4 a.m. and um, you know everyone in their own way was making sacrifices, but he definitely had to make some pretty special um, some pretty special ones.
Yeah,
So I
I
think
believe
it
Turkey is
was.
on GMT plus two, which puts them like 7 hours ahead of, say, Jim,
Mhm.
10 hours ahead of you. That's a significant time gap.
Oh yeah, it is. And Dragon did great with it. Um, I think Bry Guy, our manager, is huge shout out to him because he also took things very seriously. He was networking pretty hard, connecting to a lot of these like local teams and some of the larger teams, and really putting a lot of faith and a lot of stake into us. Um, which yeah was just it was great by him. Obviously, it's hopefully going to pay off. We still haven't made money from the DPC, but we're confident going into it. Um, And so yeah, I think we just had a good mentality about going about it. I think that was probably one of the biggest things, and then we'd been just working really hard mechanically as well.
Always a fantastic sign. And again, I remember talking with you and Jim. You were both describing the prep that was going. I remember speaking to both of you about some of the draft prep, and you
Mm.
were prepping your bands every single series going out. Like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna prioritize this hero. If we have first pick, we're gonna ban it. If we have second pick, we're gonna do this and that. And again, I remember watching these drafts while I was casting it, watching other people do it, and it was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what you said would happen. You did your homework, and homework paid off draft wise, which lead us into, of course, the I call it the gentleman's match between you and Goons in the qualifier. For those who don't know, for open qualifier number one, both the first and second place team would automatically make it into the closed qualifiers. Both you and Goons had auto qualified for the closed qualifiers at that point. He said, all right, we're going to do a gentleman's best of ones. It's supposed to be a best of 3. He said, you know what? Screw it. Best of 1. Whoever wins game 1 will have the other team forfeit game 2. Get in, get out, get it done with. We played this incredibly close BO1, and it's just funny because you were playing this best of 1 with a significant handicap, Roho. What handicap were you playing with for this BO1, Roho?
Well, there was definitely some draft handicaps. I would say, as well as I had a very tasty sandwich. But yeah, I had some Subway that my mom got, and I wanted to eat it during our series, so can't blame somebody for that, I'm sure. To elaborate on that, essentially, you like what you're saying is spot on. That it was just a best of 1. We had played through the qualifiers, so I don't think either team, American Goons and I, and like us, we didn't really want to play another full series. It was getting pretty late, especially for Dragon. Like playing another series was out of the question. So it was either kind of we play a best of 1 or we're gonna forfeit because the seeding match is. Like at that point, I remember one of the admins had said along the lines of like, we aren't sure how the seeding will affect you guys. So playing for seeding in the first open qualifier seemed like a little bit pointless in a way. But we thought it's good. Like we thought it's good practice. They were telling us we should just go and do it. And yeah, so gentleman's agreement. We do this kind of wonky draft. We're still trying. Like obviously, all credits and like credence to Goons. They did play well, and we were trying. But we weren't taking it super seriously. I remember at what there's
wait a
one
minute,
point.
Rojo. Are you joking
What?
that you accidentally were going for a determined match result? Are you going to qualify by PGL now?
I would not. I'm not going to make jokes.
I know. In this environment, the jokes are not allowed. That's why I'm making the jokes. See, I'm not a player, manager, or coach. I'm not involved with it. But
yeah.
You're saying sorry.
Of course. Great job, Badger. Yeah. We were very. I mean, we didn't really know what the outcome would even mean, so it was kind of strange to feel the seeding match. I remember there was one point in the game. Well, I'll start with the draft because the draft is, I think, very relevant to what happened. So on Grin Esports, we're a little famous in like these smaller tournaments and in a lot of scrims too for, especially on the last patch, our position 3 and position 2 Ember Flex. Because Muzi used to be a mid player, the Ecuadorian Hammer himself, and he's very good at Storm and Ember. Like those are 2 of the Spirit Heroes that he's very good at. And we just one day we were like, okay, well, we love picking Ember in the first phase because I'm very experienced on the hero. It's probably one of my favorite heroes in Dota. And we can build drafts around it really easily. We like just getting it. We feel like we win pretty consistently with it, so we take it in the first phase, and then Muzi was like, "Okay, I can try and like run this offlane. Like I've done this before. I think it's actually genuinely strong." And we won a lot of games doing that. We had some very successful, even like relevant games. I think we probably did that against San King Gomez in one of the smaller tournaments that we played. Obviously, it had its moments where it didn't work out, but we thought the draft idea behind it was interesting. It kind of like it fit us pretty well, and it worked out. So we're famous for the Ember Flex, and in this game we were like, hey, we want to try it on the new patch. We still think it kind of works, and we can pick Ember early, and we'll also pick Pugna. Pugna is a hero that we played a lot. I can play it mid. We can play it on both supports. Muzi has played the hero, but not in any like official games. And we were like, okay, whatever lane their Monkey King goes to, we will send the Pugna to. And then after the draft was finished, neither Muzi and I had picked, and I went to the bathroom and I came back and we were like, Muzi was like, I kind of just want to play Ember. And I was like, I kind of wanted to play Pugna. So we played Ember Spirit versus Monkey King Lich, which was, we realized a little bit silly, some might say.
Yes.
The lane did not go wonderful.
It did not at all. And again, it's not like Flex Ember is unheard of. I mean, anyone who follows like South American Dota knows about the Ember Flex. Matthew comes to mind. Ember Flex as a non-mid hero as a forward, but again, Muzi it's one of those things where I think if he had like a decent lane, it would have went pretty well. But again, Ember and Monkey is a notoriously bad lane for Ember in the mid lane, and there's so much more space in the off lane. It's like, wait a minute, so you're doing this notoriously bad matchup in the mid lane, but in this literally just triple the space to get run down by Monkey. It did not go well for Muzi. I felt bad for.
Yeah.
I was just saying, like, poor Muzi. He was like level 5, minute 11. I think both subs are out leveling him. It was a bad day for the Hammer.
Yeah, and we also I also didn't do very well mid at all that game. I lost to Co-op pretty significantly by both level and like CS. S played pretty well. And the matchup I don't think is great unless you play it pretty much perfectly. So it's just we really just were kind of being stupid. We had played a long day of qualifiers. Yeah, so it wasn't our best decision we probably ever made. And after the game, we were like, "Huh, that was kind of bad." But during the game, like I remember at one point, this was the anecdote I was gonna give. Jim, our position 5, he came mid and I think he was securing a rune and I got it, or of that sort. He was in the mid lane. I think we'd already taken the tower, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna leave. Be careful." And as he says that, I just walk into 2 heroes, and I can't remember if I died or not.
You did.
I think I do it twice. I think I do it twice. One of the times I die, and one of the times I actually think I get a double or a solo kill. So one of the times it works, and one of the times it doesn't. Clearly was not the most level-headed decision making from me in either case. And so yeah, we were just. I think we were all tired. I think Dragon. The only reason that game went 50 minutes was because of Dragon. He was playing his Terrorblade, and he was taking it pretty seriously, and he played really well. I think he gave them a big run for their money. But the rest of us, I mean, Muzi just had a tough game. I think we were taking it seriously, but at some point my mom brought me Subway, and I started eating Subway mid-series. Sometimes, sometimes in the middle of a team fight. Not my proudest performance.
Hey, Rojo, where's the decrep? Subway. I'm
Yeah,
eating a sandwich. Bother me later.
Yeah, as if my mic was even on. I'm kidding. But yeah, so we tried, but the seeding match, I think for anyone who wants confirmation from somebody who played it, we were not taking it seriously almost at all. And it was. I've also seen, I think maybe a napkin alt or the likes was saying something about the series versus Goons that we had played being 0-2, which is maybe it shows up that way on Wikipedia or something, but it was only one game played. So kind of like a strange like misconception. It definitely was only one game. So I don't know where that one comes from, but
we are creeping ever and ever closer to the drama. You're inching closer to the drama of the hour. There's one more BO3 first before we get to the drama of the hour, of course, Ro. So of course you get second in LPQ1, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, gets you an automatic close qualifier berth. To go to the close qualifier, you end up getting a forfeit round one. Don't know what ended up happening with that one. Regardless, you end up going against I'm not sure what to call them, the casting team, the stream team, BSJ, and Monkeys, of course, the Art Studios team, which again, the casual observer, especially the non-North American observer, would go into it saying, well, this is an easy win for BSJ and company. They're the big names. They've got some Div 1 experience on Arkosh. But I feel like a lot of people who follow NA Dota had a pretty good idea that, hey, you guys have a very good shot in this, if not being the outright favorite. What was your thoughts about this? Thoughts going into and thoughts of the result of this Fart Studios versus Grin series?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair to like, giving credit to ourselves and people who don't know us. Like, yeah, we're pretty new to the scene, and so I think it's perfectly reasonable that most people would have expected. Well, this is a team that kind of we think should be in Div 2 because they had to kind of step out because of some rulings that weren't favorable for them. And if you're kind of looking at this and you're like, well, this team will probably still be in DPC if not for that, that kind of happening to them. And so, yeah, I mean, they are a strong team. They have some pretty strong players. But we just knew that we were, that we were prepared, and we did a lot of good draft prep for them. I think one of the major things in that series was the draft prep that we did. I think I'm not sure, maybe if the people in Fart Studios were busy, or maybe they did do some draft prep, or maybe we hadn't played a series yet and closed qualifiers. So I can give them some credit that maybe draft prep would have just been difficult against us in general. But yeah, it helped a lot for us. Whatever it was, we felt that their draft prep, if they had any, wasn't befitting so much to our style because we got a lot of comfort heroes. And in any game where you're not favored, I think just having that straight up comfort and kind of knowing what to expect is really helpful. And I think they were well played games, but we had good solutions kind of throughout any situation. We felt that we had pretty good solutions, and yeah, we were confident going in that we would probably get a 2-0. Even though they were good players, we weren't trying to be cocky or anything. We just the amount of work we had put in, we thought would definitely pay off.
I remember talking to you guys, and I was going in. I was like, all right, there's two heroes we want to definitely prioritize. Speaking of comfort heroes, it was if memory serves, ban Batrider, ban Brewmaster. That your key to was that really the key to victory for you guys for winning that series?
I think so. I think a lot of the games that Fart Studios took, I think the games that they won, a lot of them were off of Batrider. And I don't think Monkey's got to play Brew once because he is an absolute beast on those heroes. I think Brewmaster is a hero you don't play against much, so it's hard to know what to expect. And Monkeys is obviously probably one of the best Brewmasters. Definitely like the best Brewmaster on the server, maybe one of the better ones in the world. So world class Brewmaster, just get rid of it. They'll probably first pick it. We might as well get rid of it. And then Batrider is kind of this. It's kind of this odd hero too. You don't. It's kind of seeing like a rise, even in like this TSM Down series. There's I think Batrider both games. So it's kind of the strong hero that's kind of creeping into the meta. Monkeys is a grandmaster on it. He's obviously also very good at that hero. So just get rid of both of them, right? Like two cheese picks that can kind of throw your game for a loop. Don't take the chance, essentially. It was kind of our thoughts. And I know we weren't even the first people to do it. I think CW Academy, in the first game they had played against Fart Studios, I think they also had the same opening bans. And one of the games they thought the IO was a bigger issue. I think in game 2, CW Academy left the Batrider open, and I think that game, Monkeys popped off on the Batrider. So we saw that. I think that it was fairly obvious from just a kind of like draft prep that like just don't give them this. Like these they're very experienced on it, and Monkeys is kind of a core part of the strategies that they have. So let's just try to not let them have it.
Like you watch him pop off on that, like, all right, write down your notebook. Ban Batrider. Do not let this man play Brew. Don't let him play Bat. Of course, you follow the strat, you win the series, and you move on to at this point, the winners final series up against American Goons. So for context in the bracket, at this time, losers was like in losers quarters. Nobody had any idea who team that lost this series would play in losers yet. They were like, I think losers top 6 at this quarters. You guys were winners finals. The winner of the series makes the DPC division America. The loser gets a win or go home BO3 winner of losers. But we're playing American Goons. I think everybody going into the series, both casual and significant NA watchers, had Goons as their favorite team. If they didn't have Goons as the favorite, they had them as the other team that's going to qualify. I think everyone went in saying these are the heavyweights. Boris, longtime veteran player, Esk, guy who's played at TI last chance qualifiers. He's been top 10 on the leaderboard, significantly highly skilled player. You've got Little Nick, who again is like the savior of the NA off lane, this wonder kid in the off lane. You've got Pingu, who again, many people rate as one of the best supports in NA, criminally underrated player. And again, Giant, who again also a support player. These are 5 guys who I think all of them have Division 1 DPC experience. I think they all do. If they don't, then most of them do. Very good players, big names. And going in, you said, all right, it's going to be a hard series, but if memory serves, that was this. Prioritize techies, either pick it or ban it before they get it, and ban Doom. So was that the game plan? How do you guys approach it strategically and tactically going into this important American Goons versus Grin series?
Yeah, I mean that was we had a lot of prep that went into it, so it was kind of these are the things that they seem to value, and these are probably the things that we expect they'll ban against us. If they don't ban these things, then we'll pick this. If they first pick open this, we'll do this. So we had quite a few. Our opening phase was very solid, and then from there the game plan was kind of okay, after we get through the second phase of bans, there's going to be some very strong meta heroes that we'll probably want to pick up. And that was kind of just our idea. We have a few heroes that we think like this hero, if they pick this hero, we had done quite a bit. So I think draft prep was a big part of that series and really all the series that we played. Um, and then let me here ask me another question as I'll refresh really quick.
I mean, it's one of those things where I know people that are casual observers don't necessarily
Mhm.
know about the importance of draft prep. But you guys are thinking about draft prep the entire time, days before, weeks before, hours before. Like, all right, these are the strats we want to watch the pro games. But again, going to American Goons, obviously they're a team that has very good micro players, very highly individual players. But the Grin is
Mhm.
always a team that tends to excel in the macro game, mid game performance. I know from talking to you guys, it seems like the way you guys approach it is, early game Jim and Gucci, they're the ones shot calling, and at that point you say, all right, you have them shot call until Soul takes over. That sort of like macro approach you took against Goons, or do you go for like a bit of a mix up there to throw them off?
No, I would say it was pretty standard to the way that we like to approach our games. Going into these qualifiers in general, we kind of went with a no nonsense approach of we're not going to pick anything too strange. We're going to pick things that we've practiced pretty well. If we haven't practiced something, we're going to make sure that we're drilling it. Um, and just makes there's a few things that we didn't quite get to bust out because it wasn't the right game for it, but um, we just thought we would do like proper draft prep and practice things well, and I guess like just play our normal game. And we thought that if we play our normal game and we do really well, we'll probably take the series. Just we've been together longer than they were. Credence to them. Obviously, they're all very good players, but it takes a little bit of time to build up a team. And I'm sure as they do more scrims and as they do more stuff, they'll be obviously an even better team than they already are just on paper. And so we had a slight advantage there. We felt, um, and then the draft prep. I think kind of the idea is like, okay, you draft really well to win your lanes. Because if they get off to a strong start and they're winning the lanes against you, it's gonna be a lot harder to make macro movements. So if we can win our lanes pretty well, which we managed to do, I think a little bit off draft. Obviously we had practiced our lanes very well, too. So if we can come out of lanes well, they'll kind of be behind and we'll be in control of the game. We can just properly take over the macro and our supports can do pretty well. And Dragon Soul is always going to be this huge insurance policy on whatever hero he's playing. He'll probably get really good farm, and then later in the game when we give him an Aegis, we'll let him kind of make these big shot calls. And then we were pretty confident in that plan, I think. In it, in the game, obviously you're not thinking that much about it, um, but you kind of have that rough idea, and you've done it enough times that it kind of falls into place.
I do know your team is definitely. I mean, pro teams in general prioritize Roshan a lot. Again, I know one
Mm-hmm.
thing that really sets your team apart is your support players are going to call for Roshan. It's like, hey, we can get Roshan. It's minute 15, minute 16. Run it to the Roche pit, boys. Get the Aegis. Give it the soul. All our Aegis is for
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Soul. And again, is that really one of those things where are you on board with this as well, or it's like, yeah, they're calling Roche.
Yeah.
Let's just grab the Aegis.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of what we've also learned as a team is just like to have trust with one another and one another's calls. Because yeah, sometimes a call won't work out, but we find that we're feeling a lot better about a game if we follow a wrong call rather than if the comms are messy and we're doing kind of all of our own things. Because we don't want to be playing a pub. We want to be playing this competitive official match where, you know, I'm listening to Jim and LGTK, and maybe I think something is really important in the mid, and if I say, oh, I think you guys should really show up for these runes, even if it's earlier or later than they'd expect, then they'll probably listen to that, and it's a big trust thing of just this person will have a good assessment of the game, and if that doesn't manage to work out, like at least as a team we're doing something rather than kind of just like playing a pub.
I think it's a really healthy attitude. I mean, the best thing to do is make the right call, but the next best thing is to do the wrong call together. As long as you're on
Hmm.
the same page, then you can sometimes turn the wrong call into a successful game outcome. Obviously, later you say, all right, well, maybe we have to adjust this thought process to make consistent and better. But in the moment, a win's a win, and doing the wrong play together can certainly get you wins. But again, you play the Goon series. You guys play pretty well. They had a bit of an off series, and again, if you guys are playing well and they're playing a little bit off, it ends up being a win. Bit of a shocker upset, but again, I mean, not that far fetched. Certainly a good win for you guys. Probably the best. I mean, it's the best case scenario. Obviously, beating the best team in the qualifiers, perception wise, getting the first seed at both qualifiers, you can't really beat that. I mean, you guys didn't lose a series, but ultimately that kind of sends them on a little bit of a tumble to the losers bracket, where of course our topical drama of the day begins. So I'm not sure how much you want to elaborate. I'll leave it a little bit open ended in terms of elaborating on interpersonal stuff here. Some of the players on Depths did not think your team was very good. Particularly, they don't think that you were very good. Again, Rojo, Mr. 50 leaderboard player, bit of a stretch to make sometimes. Not 500 leaderboard, but 50 leaderboard. But Mr. 50 leaderboard's bad. But how much you want to like this is between your series against Goons and Gatekept series? You want to like elaborate on the interpersonal stuff, or do you want to leave it more?
I mean, I'll probably leave it fairly vague. I think we've made some of our statements and basically what we want to say on social media and under some of the things that already occurred. So you can kind of gather that there, especially from what Bri said on our like Grand Esports account. Yeah, so there's things there. I don't think it's crazy drama. I don't think it's one of the most insane things ever in terms of strictly us to them. I think it's not even the broader focus of what's happening, but it's definitely a little relevant. I think Muzi is probably the Ecuadorian hammer himself. I think him being low MMR has really like it's one of the things that I think can let people kind of buy into all the things that are being said is because I think most people, if they have a personal view on me and they think that I am not very good, which I'm sure some people do, that's kind of whatever because I'm like a rank 60 player. So relatively, I'm probably, most people can probably buy that I'm going to be competitive in a series and play decently. And Dragon Soul also was top 100 just barely like a week ago. Jim has been in DPC. He's been a very high MMR player as well. GTK just dropped a little bit of MMR, but so there's a little bit of perception that if you want to like misconstrue it, then you can kind of see our stack as like low MMR, but really it's mostly just Muzi is just this huge outlier from what you'd expect to be in a closed qualifier winter final. Which I can't explain all the reasons that he's, not super high MMR. I'm sure. I don't even know all the reasons, but I think it's
from my perspective. This is a guy who used to be easily top 300. I think maybe even the top 250, top 200 at one point. This is a guy who certainly was well into the 8K sort of range. And again, I think it was either around recal and also during recal, he just dropped like a rock. Glico just didn't treat him very well. Went from top 300 to suddenly 4 did. It's like, oh, you've gone from pro player pubs to Jubei pubs. Like, oh, what have we done here?
Yeah. Muzi just kind of he's very fluid on the ladder. I've seen him easily gain 1,000 MMR. I've seen him easily drop 2,000. So that's just kind of the way he is. Sometimes player personality comes into that. Sometimes the amount of stake you're putting onto pubs matters as well. Because Muzi in a pub, I'm sure, has a very different perception of the game and a different attitude and outlook versus when we're playing a scrim. And he tried very hard in our lane drills and generally very hard in our scrims. And I think when you're doing that and you're playing against people of high level, it's the MMR it's gonna seem kind of like just it's gonna have a very different, I think, number to in terms of like its actual value and what people would like think he is. Because I think like huge shout out to Muzi. I think he played the qualifiers amazing. I think all the casters were very impressed. If you did not put a number next to his name, I think most people would assume that he was similar rank to where I am. Or like honestly, there were probably a fair few games where I feel like he outperformed me. So he played just wonderfully in these games. I think the MMR is like if it wasn't in the picture, I don't think it would even be half as relevant. Like I don't think Muzi would really be I think his play, it speaks for itself, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, as somebody who runs an amateur league as well, we literally had to like integrity ban Woozy from the league. Keep in mind, we let Wage in, we let Ja in, we let Logical in, we let Jim in, who was literally a DPC player. But even though with these guys in, it's like, nah, we still can't let Woozy in. This guy's too good. So people who are in the know knew this guy has been good for at least a solid 12, 18 years now. So again, this is not. I think just calling him some quote unquote rank 500 player is extremely disrespectful. I'm sure you would agree from what you said here. So we now move on to the actual series. Again, surprise, surprise, American Goons series. It's not really much of a shocker. It's a team that, again, in most people's eyes, probably should have won the first series. But again, everyone had them making one of the two slots. Sure, they got slot number 2 rather than slot number 1, but they got a slot. And again, it's not like you get more money from getting the first close qualifier slot. So they came there and they did their job. They recovered from the rough loss to you guys, undid the mental damage, undid the emotional damage, and DPC, or so we thought. And that's when we get to our good friend PGL drama. You see, because for those who have not seen the NA hot drama, there were some messages exchanged over Steam. I think it was just Steam message, might have been Steam and Discord, between some of the members of Gatekept and some of the members of American Goons. Keep in mind, timeline wise, this is before after American Goons lost to you guys, but before they knew they were going to play Gatekept. At this point, they were still Gatekept and Fart Studios. I think like 2 other teams and losers, and they message them like, a bit of trash talk, a bit of joke and banter, like, "Oh, you lose on purpose to play us," or something. Whatever the exact quote was. Ask responds. 2 letters, by the way. Y-E-E.
Yeah.
And on top of that, with a similar conversation between A and B and one of the Goons players, after these little bit of trash talk, banter, a little bit of flaming going back and forth, that gets sent to PGL. And I know you've weighed in personally on your Twitter. I've seen you weighing, I think, on Reddit. Grin Esports, their account has weighed in. Obviously, the Goons players have weighed in. The Goons manager, my good friend, Logical Dota 2, has weighed in. And I mean, everybody from PPD to AUI to Cryptic, but a lot of the big either NA players, former players, casters, and so on. I mean, Quinn Callahan, the best player in the world, perhaps, has weighed in on this one. I mean, this is Mr. Cool, Calm, and Collected. He's coming up from his pedestal of 2-time major winner. Like, oh yeah, free little Nick again. Like, there's been a lot of attention to the situation. But while you're here having this little candid conversation with your friend Badger, I want to go once again weigh in on this disqualification situation and what your thoughts are with this situation, the whole free goons thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think most of the community is just kind of in a bit of an uproar, and I think that's I think it's very rightly so because I think the basis of it is that obviously I think most people are in the scene have a good amount of respect for all these players. So it's one of those things where you see it already feels off because it doesn't make a lot of sense initially, and then when you're presented kind of very quickly that these players are now disqualified and will be banned from future events, you imagine that the basis of it is going to be pretty strong. And from what we've been presented, and I know Logical, I think, made a very like well-written statement about it. Without more, it's hard to see what merit the decision has. And so, yeah, that's why I was one of the original voices where when all this stuff is like coming out, I wanted our team to weigh in on it. I felt that it would kind of be like a personal responsibility that it doesn't feel very like sportsmanlike, if we were, because honestly, when you look at it from like a Grin Esports perspective, we would probably rather not play against Goons in DPC because they're a great team. But I think as a team we all kind of decided like this is something we should weigh in on. And obviously anything going on isn't super relevant to us, but at the core of the evidence and what's being like said is kind of that Grin Esports is a like kind of a no-name team that didn't really have a chance to beat Goons. So it seems plausible that Goons threw the series is at the basis of it, which is why, as a person who plays it, it's very odd. Who played the series, very odd to me.
That's why we're
Um,
here. We're putting some names to the no-name players.
yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Even just a small interview, or however many people see this, I think it's great to establish myself as a little bit of a name, just so people know who I am. And I've been around in the scene roughly as a small community figure, but it's cool to feel that I can give a bit of like presence to the person playing pubs.
I do have one more comment though about the Goons thing before I move on to the topic.
Mm-hmm.
I can say though is there's one thing I want to say about the North American Dota scene. Is I used to work with BTS for about 2 years, tournaments at that. And if there's one thing I know about NA is nobody can keep a fucking secret. This is the first time I cursed all the time. I just have much emphasis on what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm.
Is nobody can keep a secret. Like the pro players and the commentators and the TOs and even the gambling sites, they're all in contact with each other. Like they're kind of like, hey, this seems a little odd here, it seems a little odd there. There has never been any suspicion regarding the players. Logical. These are all tenured guys. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
when there were the players that were formerly on Felt that got banned. The TOs knew. The players knew. This is all around the scene. The players on Eternity, everybody knew. The player on Dreamer who got back banned by Valve, people knew. It was floating around the scene internally for months of that. Everybody knew. Yeah, something is sus with these players, and these are upstanding, absolutely upstanding members of the community. If they actually did something, I would be extraordinarily shocked by this. Again,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like it's a potential bad handling of things here, at least from my perspective. Again, when we BTS did bans, we put a lot more investigation from these things. Like we would interview players and we'd go and check gambling site lines, contact these people, and
Mm-hmm.
we would ensure we're doing our diligence. And we even I remember this was before my time, the whole Steel Borko thing. They even got him unbanned because he was unjustly banned. So these things are very serious. It's not only in many cases someone's livelihood on the line, but it's their personal pride and reputation. Which again, for a player like Steel Borko who hasn't really made much money since getting unbanned, at least having your name cleared and say, hey, I'm not one of those guys who is killing the scene is very huge thing. I think having players and having logical, it's, it's utterly disgusting. Seeing that it's little script who's shadow managing this team is just it's utter and complete
Yeah,
insanity.
yeah. I think as a whole, it's all very disrespectful to everyone involved. I think that's one of the things that I think makes it makes us want to be somewhat vocal about it, is that at the basis of it, there's a lot of strange allegations and kind of dead ends that don't make a lot of sense. And especially too, I mean, obviously, like you said, this has a huge impact on these players that are trying to make a livelihood out of this. And um, it's just like this besmirchment on their reputation for very minor things, and as far as we know, pretty minor evidence. And as I said, logical, and the people on the team have put out pretty well informed statements. I think from their perspective of things, I think it's pretty easy to agree with them. And even despite if you have any, if anybody has any like preconceived notions of these people or of their like personalities, I think just in general, like their track record and their motives, none of it really lines up. Despite what you might think of any of the players individually. It's just it's a very strange situation to feel that it was, I think, all of us in a Discord seeing this kind of Reddit post by he who shall not be named, and just thinking like this is absurd. Like like this is so funny that we're seeing this, and then seeing the post deleted, and then suddenly a day later there's this big statement with huge like precedent. And so it was all very quick, all very um all really takes you back pretty quickly.
You're getting a lot of messages on Discord, bro.
Sorry.
It's all right, don't worry. But obviously, hopefully, we free goons. Hopefully, our situation taken care of. But if not, at least, you guys are still in DPC. You're still there. So again, it's you guys still in that comfy first spot, which brings me into the future part that has not happened yet. You guys will be playing in Division 2 DPC. Certainly going to be an uphill battle. There's a number of good teams, particularly Wildcard, who again I have RCY was a player that I have been on for a while. I think that guy is super good middle laner. I'm actually really excited to see you take on RCY. I think RCY, no offense, I think he is the best individual player in the mid lane in Div 2 DPC. And if I want to see you go to battle against this guy, that's gonna be a hell of a time seeing that. Saying, seeing your Mirana or Windrunner versus his Tinker, that'd be fun.
Oh, absolutely. I think
his Invoker maybe that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about RCY individually, but I've played against him in some pubs, and he is extremely mechanically impressive, just as a player. So, yeah, he's definitely somebody to watch out for. I'm hoping to match him where I can, but yeah, that guy's a beast from what I've seen. Absolutely.
Obviously, outside of Wildcard, number of teams. Some of them range to pretty good. Some of them to teams where you'd be favored against, but it's definitely not going to be an easy road. Again, I think you guys are not going to get relegated at the very least. I hope you guys get promoted. I think the odds are lower than. I mean, obviously, I'm pretty comfortable saying you guys are not going to get relegated. Promotion, a little bit harder. Again, C-Dub, Wildcard, some good teams in there, but we shall see what ends up happening with this exciting Div 2 run ahead. But again, is that going to be the foreseeable future for you? Is run Div 2, see what happens? I think if you guys don't get relegated, I think you're technically in. If there is a sort of qualifier, you're technically in the qualifier as well for TI. Which, again, speaking of long roads, but is that the immediate future for you guys?
Yeah, I think our attitude has kind of just been like it was focus on the qualifiers, and now I think it's going to be focus on Division 2, and hopefully, like, I think we do have bigger goals and aspirations. I think as a team, I think we can meet those. But all in all, we want to take a one step forward. Don't want to kind of trip over ourselves. Just you don't want to get ahead of yourselves. I think there are some very good teams in Division 2, and I have a lot of respect for a lot of these players on these teams. So definitely, it will be something to watch out for.
Either way, though, I'm excited. Maybe I'll interview you again in 2 or 3 years after you make Division 1, then you get relegated, then you leave for Europe, then you leave for China, come back, TI in hand, whatever nonsense I want to make up at the time. But obviously, great talking with you, bro. It's just what we're now about an hour into this interview. Actually, it's been a fun time though. Obviously, do you have anything, any final words to say to people, your fans, Dota, and Twitter as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me, of course. I think huge shout out to all the people on my team, and especially I think massive shout out to all the people who have congratulated us. I think we have a lot of people who were watching, casting the games, people who generally have been very supportive of our journey, even just despite. And I have a lot of friends that I've been friends with for a long time who are very kind. I'm very appreciative of anyone that is supporting us, and hopefully you guys will continue supporting us, and we can watch the NA scene heal and grow, and make NA Dota great again, I suppose.
That's the goal, of course. But thanks again to Roho. Free Goons, of course. If you enjoyed the interview, catch more of my stuff on YouTube, Twitter, I'm on Twitch. Twitter's in the screen. The rest was in. Again, thanks to Roho. Congratulations to lowest qual win, of course, best of buddies, especially my good friend Jim and Div 2 DPC. But for now, thank you for watching. Have a great night.